So, Tom, I thought we'd start today, although if you want to start somewhere else, just let me know. But this whole Bill C-18 issue with the fact that, from what I understand, Meta has already started blocking some Canadians from accessing local news. And they're doing this, I guess, as a bit of a test balloon to see what kind of pushback they get.
Yeah.
But with respect to Bill C-18, the Prime Minister was obviously asked about that today. Here's what he said.
The fact that these internet giants would rather cut off Canadians' access to local news than pay their fair share is a real problem. And now they're resorting to bullying tactics to try and get their way. It's not going to work. Canadians know how important news is, and access to quality local journalism particularly is essential for not just the well-being of their communities, for the well-being of our democracy. We will continue to make sure that these incredibly profitable corporations contribute to strengthening our democracy, not weakening it.
Okay, so he's talking a pretty tough game there. Do you think the folks at Meta are just thumbing their nose at him or what?
I don't think there's anything personal about it. I think it's completely a business decision on their part, and it's their business. I mean, Mr. Trudeau can say, well, if you don't do that, then we'll punish you in this and that and the other way. They'll just adapt to it. They do business in every single country in the world. Look, there are more than 1 billion people on the planet Earth with a Facebook account, right? So they're not smarting for any number of Canadians who might or might not be there. It'll reduce some of their traffic. It might squeeze them because some people go to those platforms to get their news. There's other things that have been done that make more sense. Like I often go to Apple News, and they seem to have deals with everybody, even the ones with paywalls, and they put up a lot of their stuff once you're through them. So there are different ways to get the result. I think that some of this is a bit naive and ham-fisted on the part of the government to believe that they can come up with a piece of legislation in Ottawa that's somehow going to change the course of digital history. And I think that Mr. Trudeau is playing this one for the gallery. I don't think he's wrong to try to say, affirm simply that they should be paying their fair share, but I don't think it's going to produce the result he's hoping for.
Well, I'm trying to think. Australia took a stance against this, I believe, a while ago, right? Are we trying to follow in their footsteps? Is that workable, do you think? Yeah,
it seems that, Australia's got some pretty progressive folks writing their legislation these days, but they did something similar, for example, with a registry of foreign agents as a way of trying to deal with China. And they're a big country with a small-ish population, and they're dealing with that Asian giant who's literally right in their backyard, and they had to try to find out a way to deal with it because it was really becoming a huge problem for them as well. Here, Mr. Trudeau's, there are examples. The Australian model actually started off quite strong, produced very large and strong and massive pushback from these tech giants. And what happened was Australia came up with a middle-of-the-road solution. Is the same sort of thing going to happen here? It doesn't seem like it because it looks like Mr. Trudeau's busy painting himself into a corner. Again, there's going to be an election in a horizon of 1 year. It could be as early as this fall, as far as I'm concerned, maybe next spring. It's simply mathematics. Minority governments last for an average of 2 years, 2.5 at the outside, and maybe that's what we're looking at here for Trudeau. So he's going to try to posture and show himself. This is something, for example, that where the NDP has been quite strong with Charlie Angus over the years. So maybe Mr. Trudeau is just trying to shore up that part of his base and say, no, I've got this. I'm going to try to fight these guys, and if they don't give us what we want, then I'll say bad things about them, but I don't think it's going to change the course of history.
Okay. I'm just thinking here about what might prevent an election from happening sooner than later, and I think a lot of it would have to do with this unraveling situation with David Johnston. The latest being finding out about, I think it's Sheila Block, the Toronto lawyer that made donations. I think what I want to ask you here, Tom, is has David Johnston lost the plot?
I think that's the key question. And he did seem a bit befuddled as he tried to speak yesterday. The key thing that I'm looking at is when somebody asked him a straight-up question. You said this in your report, that there were no examples where Mr. Trudeau or any minister, where any of them held back in dealing with a case of Chinese government interference. But then we find out that the leader of the opposition and Mr. Trudeau's main rival in the last election, Mr. O'Toole, was the object of a direct plot by China, and they had clear evidence of that they shared with him to go after him, his party, have a disinformation campaign because he took a very strong stance against China. Now, it's hard to believe that nobody around Mr. Trudeau or anywhere in the government knew that CSIS had this information about this, this skullduggery against the Conservatives and against Mr. O'Toole. And yet, in his report, David Johnston affirmed. He made this affirmation, the one that I just referenced, that there's no case where they didn't act. Well, either when he was asked, by the way, why he didn't put that in his report, he said, well, when I spoke to Mr. O'Toole, I spoke about the information we had, but he also put in his report that he had been given everything. And so he clearly hadn't. So he undermined his own report. But since it took me more than a minute to say that, it's something that's a bit too complicated, and people are just going to start shrugging their shoulders at some point. But usually that's what happens. But I'll tell you, Natasha, here, people I speak to everywhere in Canada, and I do tons of media across the country, I've not met a single person who's satisfied with the answer from Mr. Trudeau so far on this. He'll again, what's he doing with Meta? What's he doing with fighting Facebook and the like? Well, he's trying to change the channel. He wants to be talking about something else. He thinks that he got away with it, and I don't think he did.
It's interesting, Tom, because if he didn't get away with it, David Johnston's finished testifying. The issue, I know we always talk about this resonating with Canadians, although I think almost the longer it goes on, unless someone else stands up and goes, hey, I was also a target, and we're running out of targets here in the Conservatives perhaps, people will just kind of forget about this. You not think that's the case?
Generally, that's the rule of thumb.
Your 6-week rule.
That people move on. Just come on. We get back in the fall. This is not going to be in the news. But I think that it's interesting when Bob Fife and the Toronto Star ran front page stories about Mr. Trudeau interfering in the SNC-Lavalin prosecutions. Trudeau went before the cameras and said that the Globe and Mail was lying. That it was fake news. It just wasn't true. It was completely false. So you call Bob Fife a liar at your own risk and expense. Because, of course, what came out with Jody Wilson-Raybould and the whole case involving Mr. Trudeau, well, it was actually the ethics commissioner, federal ethics commissioner, said, no, you broke the law. You're not allowed to do what you did. You were helping a friend in a prosecution case, and you're not allowed to do that. And so this is the type of thing where Mr. Trudeau sometimes overreaches. He looked at Mr. Johnston and said, this guy's perfect, and he was. I mean, I applauded the nomination, saying, of course, what a sterling reputation. But then all the stuff around the Trudeau Foundation comes out. And where was Mr. Johnston right up until the moment he was named special rapporteur? He had a key role at the Trudeau Foundation, so he couldn't possibly be the one to continue looking at that, and yet he dug in. And he came up with his report, and we're starting to realize that there are tons of holes in that. And then he still digs in, and he writes a paper in the Globe and Mail saying, I will not be dissuaded. And he shows up in commission for 3.5 hours, and he was having trouble answering. An interesting comparison was made by Corey Tanaka. I was doing Vasha Capellas' show this afternoon, and he said, he reminds me of Robert Mueller. Who also a very respected person, but when he tried to drill down on the Donald Trump stuff and the Russia investigation, you could sense that there were parts of it that he was having trouble handling. And that's the impression that I got from my old friend David Johnston, that he would have been better off knowing that he had contributed so much to Canadian life, but not taking this particular mandate because it's coming back to hurt him.